This is Kimono Numa. In his place. I'm just welcoming everybody to Monday Live. We get together every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern to talk about the future of smarter buildings. The views expressed here are our own. We welcome interaction. And I think that covers the intro from what I remember Anto saying, but anybody else? Maybe Ken, you can jump in since you're up next.
Oh, I think that's pretty much, I think he also says something about that the views are of those of the speakers and not necessarily anybody else. So I think that's the only thing that I remember he says that we haven't said yet.
Yeah, we haven't learned yet. We have to learn
Yeah, that's right.
that. Okay,
Do you
let's
want to go on to the next slide? Because I think the next
yeah.
slide introduces the session. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So today's session is the end of September, obviously, and we had this theme of innovation. And we will be talking about what we've talked about the rest of the month, but also about foundational innovation. Um, so the fundamentals, I guess, is what we call them. What are the fundamentals? We'll start with some news and trends from Ken Sinclair. Then we'll get into the Let's Innovate, and we'll have a discussion, and we welcome everybody to put in comments in the chat and jump in. So
Okay, if
Ken.
you can slip to the next slide, then I'll say, okay, great. Thanks, Kimon. Thanks for being the host. We hadn't sorted it all out yet as to who's going to do that. You did a good job. Okay, so we got lots going on. The big thing is we've had a whole month about innovating, and I think it's been a good intro into all of this, what we need to do to enable AI to help us innovate. And we started early in the month at the bottom of the page there with Beyond the Blank Page, unlocking the data-driven future of buildings. And then the next session we did was unpacking the future of operational innovations. And then the last week we did unpacking innovation in the BAS value chain. So you can kind of see those are the summaries of those sessions. And the title of this one was, oops, where are we at? Okay.
Oops, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's basically it. Up in the corner there, actually, Kimon sent this through to me. It's other people are starting to look into what we're looking at, the semantics of all of this and how AI could go faster and get more information if we can come to some kind of agreements on what the semantics are to kind of on sort this out. So there's a good article there, and Kimon put some comments on there. So if you actually click that, it'll take you directly to the session. No,
This
yeah,
one here.
the one in the corner there, left over, right on the left. Yeah, that one there.
Right, that one, yeah.
So that actually goes to the LinkedIn. And it links to the article, The Next Evolution of the Golden Layers, which I thought was an interesting thing. So anyway, that's just there for your reading. Maybe we can go back. I'll let you read that. I don't think we want to get into that. It's fairly complex. The other thing we're doing is we're basically becoming the platform where the industry posts their thoughts, and we're also gathering more more of the industry. As you can see there in the middle there, that we're now part of the BIM Coordinator Summit, and they've acknowledged us as their media partner, and we're really pleased to be part of that. Of course, the big event for automated buildings is our AHR session. We've got 18 of those. That's in the bottom corner over there. And we're starting to it's interesting, we're all learning as we're moving into the sessions. And I'm learning new things about how all of this is done, and the kids are learning new things about how it was done. And I think the combination is important. And I think that's something the whole industry is right at, is we're in this transitionary period where they have half of the information and we have half of the information. And we've definitely got to put those two pieces together. And I think AHR is going to be a real melding pot of that. So very pleased with that. We're a media sponsor of Smart Buildings. That's the big show in London in October. It's coming up really quick. Quite a few of our sponsors are a part of that show as well. I think that just shows how global everything we're doing is. And I think that's about it, Kimon. And thank you for all the support you've been giving us and taking over as moderator.
Thank you. Okay, so C4SB next. Is Rick on? Don't see him. Oh, there. You're on, Rick. You're on mute.
And I'm also on mute. Yeah. And I'm also trying to get into the car. So as we had talked about the last couple of weeks, each week we intend to sort of highlight one of the working groups or sort of the projects that we're working on. And I'm kind of looking at who else is on here to be able to potentially talk about one of the working groups or give an update. And I was hoping to talk a little bit about what we're doing with the TXO framework as one of our working groups. And if anybody wants to chime in and talk about what the status of that is or some of the other work that's happening, I'm not sure whether I can't tell from my phone whether Pete Scanlon's on or Glenn Allendinger's there to be able to talk about some of the work that's being done to create this total cost of ownership tool or tooling and the progress of that. But that's the thing we've talked about or threatened to bring to market, bring to public use is a tool and a framework for being able to set the context of total cost of ownership of a building throughout its life cycle. And that working group, I think, will be one of the more useful when we get some, when we get some of those tools out for people to see. But we want to invite people to come work on all these different working groups. But the TXO one is the one that I was hoping to do just a little bit of highlighting on. If anybody else wants to jump in and talk about what's happening with that or what they think the context setting with TCO is, that would be great.
I have some comments, if that's okay, Rick.
Absolutely.
So what Ken just pointed to about the article about the semantic model layer, which has been a focus of the other semantic building group as well too, but relating to TXO, if we want to get a total cost of anything, it implies that we need to get to the data where anything lives, which means that we need to have that structure in place to even find it. And that's the point of the article and something that we've been saying in many different ways, different sessions. But you obviously can use AI to find unstructured data, but if you have completely unstructured and no organization, it starts to make assumptions and hallucinations, which is the worst place to be. And I think that's part of the goal of the semantic building group. And I think TXO would be one use case example of that. Once we have that semantics and ontology in place, then we can at least start pointing in the right direction rather than saying, well, everything's a free-for-all and you can kind of have AI find stuff. So as far as a fundamental or innovation that we're talking about today, I think that fits in with the theme.
Right. Anybody else?
Well, the other thing, sorry,
Go ahead.
the other thing that came up is in the summary of last Monday's session, the AI picked that up, that this TXO is an important piece because it kind of saw that everything was kind of going around trying to come up with a better method of evaluating the value. And the TXO is definitely that tool. So I think it's a really important tool. So anything we can do to expedite it will be great.
Rick, it's Glenn. We talked briefly last week about we should have this prototype thing staged and ready, I think, in the next day or so. And then we need to go find people to help us vet some of these values.
Well, that's great. Thanks for the update. And when that kind of brings up the other thing is like if for so getting people to help vet the values and to kind of run the TXO tool, I'll call it a tool, through some real world examples of buildings would be great. So if anybody has specific buildings that we can sort of test it out on or kind of run it through the, give it a sanity check. I think that's what you're looking for, right, Glenn?
Yep.
Perfect.
Great.
So Ken, or did you set a deadline for this, or was that just my med?
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Oh, I was just saying, it sounds like Ken wants us to hurry up.
Oh yeah,
That's my nature.
I got that feeling.
Yeah. I'm in the news business. Come on, create some news. Don't talk about it, do it.
Awesome. Well, that's all. Appreciate everybody's jumping in and helping with explain all that.
Okay.
I got to get in the car.
Okay. Great. Thanks. Anybody else have any thoughts on any of the other activities at C4SB? I could throw a few things in relating to the work that we've been doing on the prototype building that I think we're going to be able to start sharing more of that. That's what we've heard from the owner of the building. So I think, Rick, that would be an interesting kind of maybe next month activity to start kind of describing more of the activities on that. I mean, the results of what's happening on that, the PAE building. I guess we can start naming it now that they said it's okay to start talking about it. But
Well, that's a great point, Kimon, in that we just got permission or just got authorization to be able to all start telling the story of what's happening and the different work of the working groups that is sort of manifesting itself in the at this building in Portland. And again, I'm sorry for them getting in the car. It's going to be a little distraction, but we might be able to start talking about that, like as soon as next week, rather than, I guess that is next month.
yeah,
Sorry.
next month we're heading toward the end of the year. And,
Okay. Well, there we go.
yeah, and one of the drivers has been there's a lot of conferences and presentations that are coming up next month, and we wanted to be able to start describing what's been happening and getting that permission. I think it was critical, and it's great that it's going to start coming out. And a lot of these other working groups, I think, could fit right into that too. I think even TXO could be an interesting angle because we're using that as kind of a prototype of here's how things are right now. How can we adjust it to make it more innovative, I guess is the word for today, to innovate more, to connect the dots and get the fundamentals in place to have systems talking to each other and using the semantics and everything. So it's pretty exciting.
If I could jump in here, I think I'm being accused of reporting the news before it happens, and we got a request from Andy McMillan to take down our BACnet Cloud Collective article because we were posting thoughts that were not confirmed yet. So he asked us to hold off and offered us a first release once it's all together. So that's one of the advantages and disadvantages of the new and improved automated buildings is that it's because we're reporting the news almost near time. We do tend to be pushing everybody that is on these committees. But I think what you should do is take the compliment that what you're doing is extremely important. And I don't know, the fact that the paint hasn't dried, I believe is part of the excitement and part of the news. And maybe we need to paraphrase some of our stuff that we're getting. Because we kind of get into the thing that you don't want to tell us something because it's not set in stone. But I don't think anything we're doing is ever going to be set in stone. So we're in a very fluid stage trying to get all these changes happening at the same time. So if you can bear with us and let us report what we can. Where the other thing is we can pretty much change anything online. That if there's anything that's significantly wrong, we can quickly correct that so that the next time somebody clicks on it, they get the correct information.
All good, Ken. We're still fine tuning the message there, and Andy wanted to make sure the ink was dry before it got out. So, anyways, thank you for that.
It all fell on my daughter because we made her post it. So
All good.
You know.
Okay. Any other thoughts? We can move on.
Actually, maybe just Jim, while you and I are talking, we've got another agenda that we've got this meeting that's part of our session, that's education session, that's part of our AHR offering, which is the Back to the Future BACnet one. And I've asked Rick to be part of that, and he's agreed. And I just got a request from Andy to be part of it. So it looks like our committee for Vegas is coming together. And this is, as much as anything, is what I want to help this group do, is I want to help you promote that and get everybody who's interested and is in Vegas out to the session. And we don't know exactly what it is we're going to say February 1st or 2nd in Vegas, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be further along in the evolutionary chain, and we'll have a better idea. So what I need is some information that is precisely vague and vaguely precise, and I'm really pleased to publish that kind of information to create the interest.
I'm looking forward to it very much. Thank you.
Maybe one other thought, Ken, since you brought this up, obviously the news, it's important to get the news out. We obviously have to be careful to not jump too far ahead, but in general, my feeling is it's better to get it out there, even if it's not quite ready yet, because if we wait for it to be perfect, it's going to be too late, and then there will be no reaction. And in fact, from the Linux Foundation perspective, as far as sharing things that are happening, I mean, that kind of this open source approach, it leans more towards, well, let's put it out there, and this whole agile approach versus holding back and waiting for it to be perfect, and it'll never be perfect. So I'm kind of with you on, I would encourage more openness and sharing. Obviously we have to be curated and careful about it too, but I think that's the way to innovate. Actually, innovation is part of that. We can't innovate in a silo.
The other thing that's happening, I don't know if it's happening in your lives, but it is ours. As we reach out and more use AI, it brings back information that we don't even have. Like when we start doing some of this stuff, and all of a sudden it pulls in a whole new piece or a whole new identity, and that kind of changes the equation. So we're almost evolving in real time, I think. So we got to hang a little looser than we have been. We got to think more like the startup kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point, because AI is pushing faster innovation, but we have to be part of that conversation. And if we don't at least somehow keep pace with it, then it kind of gets away and it'll start making up stuff or hallucinating or whatever. But if we're part of it, then we can guide it.
Well, I'm actually surprised when I read Kelly's summaries of these things, and she's used AI. Inevitably, she brings back one or two concepts or connections that I'm not aware of. And as you guys know, I've been around the industry for a long time, and I thought I knew everybody. But what's happening is there's people that are been created yesterday that are going to have an effect on our industry. So we're moving so fast that I think we got to understand that everything we're looking at is probably not all that accurate. Although I'm not so sure in the past that everything we looked at was all that accurate either. But we just kind of have to keep it moving. I think getting it. imagine we're leading the conversation, and anybody should be able to jump in and change the conversation because they may have a significant piece that will in fact change it. And the other thing that's happening is, of course, we're not doing things the way we used to. We're doing things completely different because of AI. So we have to, it's a big thing. And that's what I was talking about putting together the sessions is we got two pieces. We got people that have all this history in the industry and people that have uh, zero interest or experience in the industry. And I'm not sure who's most valuable because we're into that kind of change. So anyway, too much information.
That's good. That's great. Glenn, you had something to say? I saw your light.
Nope.
Okay. Keith, you have any thoughts on AI? I know you always have great ideas on AI and waiting for things to be perfect. If you're on.
Just unmute myself.
Oh, the tornado, here he comes. Nope.
Yeah, so yeah, sorry about that. I'm on my cell phone and hold up in here in the hotel room attending the EEI conference. But yeah, I have lots of thoughts around the application of AI and innovation. Thus far, all I've been hearing about though from and it's a great conversation, but I'm hearing a lot about two kinds of AI which we don't particularly play in. So I mean, I'm hearing more about generative AI and predictive AI, like fall detection, insights, and stuff. We're square on the predictive AI and supervisory control, autonomous, building optimization. So I don't think I have too much to add to the conversation.
And your audio is a little bit breaking up. I'm not sure if everybody else hears that or not, but we heard most of what you said, I think.
Yeah. I mean, prescriptive AI doesn't hallucinate or make up stuff. Like it's
right.
the ground truth control.
Yeah. And that's actually partially from the innovation, the fundamental stuff too. I mean, there's AI, like you said, it's bunched into one thing, but there's many different types. And yeah, we won't get into the details.
Careful, not to lump all AI, especially advanced prescriptive AI in with the other stuff, but they're completely different.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we'll move on into other news. I know there's a lot of activity coming up as far as things that are happening at conferences and sessions next month. Does anybody else want to start? Any new announcements or anything? Okay. There is a session being planned by the Asset Leadership Network, and C4SB and the Linux Foundation is going to be part of that. It's in DC. There's a question whether the shutdown is going to have any impact on it, but it is being planned in October as a news item. And then I'll be there. Others will be there as well. If it happens, if the shutdown doesn't affect it. There's the U.S. Green Building Council conference coming up that I'll be presenting at next month, and then also Trade Line in San Diego, Space Strategies, and an event at Penn State. And I see somebody raising their hand. Mike, you wanted to say something? Let's see how I add you here. I'm not the moderator. I mean, I'm not a panelist. I mean, the host here, so I don't know how I can add others that are not. You might not be able to do that. Just talking permission.
Simon, I just wanted to say that the ALN event in October is subject to the federal government being open. And we'll find out about that in the next couple days. And even if the federal government's closed, we could have private space. But there's also an option that we postpone that. But I'm hoping that, please God, they don't shut down the government. The ALN newsletter will have all that information.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Anybody else on news or the thoughts before we go into the innovation of the fundamentals? Okay, let's keep going then. I inserted some slides. Let's see, we already did that. Am I going forward here? No. Yeah, I inserted a couple slides that I wanted to talk about innovation of the fundamentals and see if it triggers any thoughts from everybody else. So from my angle, looking at buildings, if I come from the building side, I see a lot of the fundamentals are missing in buildings, even though they're declared smart buildings, even though we use all these technologies. And I think when we miss the fundamentals, things like this happen, catastrophes. This was in London, but it happens in the US and other places too. A fire starts on the 4th floor because of an electrical fault. In 15 minutes, it reaches the 24th floor. It burns for 60 hours, kills 72 people, injures 70, 223 escape, electrical fault. And this is an issue because if we can't maintain and manage our buildings, and all the technology that we have, if we can't safeguard the most important asset, which is our lives, then we've essentially failed at that. And I've seen these kind of patterns where misses like that happen. And for example, in building information modeling, in the handover to operations, a lot of the data just gets lost. And this is what we're seeing even in the prototype projects that we talked about at C4SB. If you can't find the air handling unit or anything else in the building, when you go into operations, then you're just losing all that valuable information that becomes fundamental to the maintenance and management of the building. Because ultimately, if we're designing these assets and buildings for people to occupy, it becomes a bad example of the fundamental innovation of not being able to get to that information. So in this building, it was human errors in engineering and maintenance. So for example, there was a renovation that happened on the exterior skin, and they put some kind of cladding that was not fire resistant and became like a chimney. That's why it went in 15 minutes and engulfed the whole building. Then there were maintenance issues of the systems in the building. There were smoke detectors, but they were the home smoke. They were not a whole building smoke detection system. It was basically room by room, so it was not a good system, basically. So there was poor engineering design. There was combustible retrofits, architectural detailing flaws. Pretty much everybody along the line of putting this building together, and maintenance failures, ignored warnings, systemic oversight failures, and ultimately, and we've seen, and this is part of the conversation next month in DC too. So we design and construct these buildings, we put all the smart systems in there, and then ultimately we ask the fire department to come and save us from our building when it's on fire. But the fire department has zero information, even floor plans. They don't know how old the building is. They don't know what kind of structure it is. They walk in blind, and they have to make a decision of do they go to the upper floor and save people. And that's a huge failure, I think, on us as an industry if we can't even give the fundamental information to the people that matter, the fire department. And I know I'm generalizing here, but this is not really incident that happens once in a while, happens every day. According to, we talked to Victor Ash, the fire chief, and he says this is how fire departments operate. That's kind of the status quo. They go in blind to buildings, even into new buildings. So that's one example of a fundamental innovation failure. Another one that's interesting is more about the decision-making process and how we hold on to innovation and maintain it over time. So this is more of a governance thing. So in 1912, LA had the largest electrified mass transit system in the world. It had 1,000 miles of track. By 1960, it was dismantled, and then 650 miles of freeways and congestion and everything else that came with it. And buses were replacing that innovation, and different kind of innovation. yesterday there was an article that came out that says the longest light rail line in the world is in Los Angeles now. It's a 58-mile long line. It doesn't match the 1,000 miles that we had before, but there's 121 miles today in Los Angeles, and it is the longest light rail line in the world. So the question here from a fundamental innovation perspective is, how do we make decisions on what to innovate on and not go towards the wrong decisions or shiny objects that end up not working or cause other problems? And then how do we maintain that over time? Roger actually puts a question here, the tragedy of the fire. What specifically should have been done differently to reduce the impact of the fire? I think it's an information access problem, because if there was a decision to reclad the building with a material that was not fireproof, whoever made that decision made it in isolation without knowing the potential impact. If I know that combustible materials for 24 floors with air gap in between or whatever happened that made that chimney effect is a bad decision, that's an engineering knowledge that somehow got lost along the way or didn't communicate. And the building itself was not communicating. So the smoke alarm system being in every apartment versus being a whole building system did not allow the occupants of the building to know what was going on. The fire department that walks in the building without access to anything, literally they know nothing when they go into a lot of these buildings. They're reverse engineering the structure and looking at the fire and saying, well, there's probably about 20 minutes before that floor collapses, or there's no time at all, we can't go up to that floor. And they're just poking around in walls to try and basically pull the building apart while it's on fire to save people and property. So I think shining a spotlight on that problem is an important one for us to understand. What are we ultimately innovating for? We're innovating for comfort, but also for safety. Anyway, that's my view. And any thoughts?
I guess I'm going to start. Come on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Seems to be my lot in life here. So it's interesting in hearing you bring up the example in the UK of the building. I think I can't really comment any further on the material they used to clad the exterior, because that's really less of an information system in a building control perspective than it is information about the knowledge of the engineer who made the buying decision, right? Mm-hmm. But with regard to some basics, access to floor plans, knowing what's in the building, where the equipment is located. The discussions we've had many times about BIM as a kind of a starting point for capturing that fundamental information, is whether BIM is the right or the wrong answer. Having it's information that it is absolutely fundamental to running the building and to providing security to its occupants. And I think what fundamentally needs to change is that when owners build a building and or tenants lease space in the building, that they need to insist that this information is available and can be directed to the appropriate people who can take advantage of it. So a few years ago, I was involved in a project at a large arena, not too far from where I live here in Richmond, Virginia. And that particular arena has a full complement of automation systems, for the HVAC and for lighting and for access control and so on, and fire and life safety and all of it. And part of the project that got implemented was the ability, from a safety perspective, to allow police and fire to gain access to the software that was being used to visualize in 3D the various spaces within the building. Because in that 3D software package, they were able to have camera feeds that showed them they could basically navigate throughout the facility to see where people were, to see where smoke was, if there was a smoke situation in the arena itself. And this was considered a pretty novel advancement at the time. This was about 2 years ago. And there's no question in my mind that from a technology standpoint, we have that ability and have had it for some time. The question is, what's going to make how are we going to change the conversation such that that owners demand this as part, in their own mind, understand that this is something they should have, and it should be specified at the time the building is designed, and it should be straightforward that everybody who provides a system is essentially expected to provide that system in a manner by which the data is easily accessible and can be updated as required over the maintenance life of the facility. And it's setting that expectation, I think, is the fundamental shift that needs to happen in our industry, because it's not being done, in my mind. We create a bunch of silos, and then the vendors are providing systems that meet the functionality requirements specified, and that seems to be as far as it goes. And not saying that that's a bad thing. That's a very important thing, that it functionally does what it's meant to do. But if in parallel there isn't also the requirement for the information to be transparent and fully available, easily fully available, and in a format that is standard, so that any service provider, whether it's the original manufacturer or their systems integrator or a service company, can easily access that information and take advantage of it to whatever service they're providing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, if we go back to the BIM discussion, yeah, in the perfect world, all this information would be made accessible to the owner. And if we get back to the fundamental innovation, I've seen challenges over the years that if you have too much information, like a 3D model is great in certain use cases, but when we talked to the fire chief, he even said just even basic floor plan, just knowing how many floors are in the building, what's the structure of the building, and then with AI, having a conversation, even not even having to look at a model possibly and saying, I'm on the 3rd floor, what's going on here, goes back to if you had a semantic model like we were talking about earlier, then that building would start having some kind of intelligence. It's embedded in the bricks and mortar, and the systems are in the silos, so everything just kind of is not talking to anything. And if we go back to the total cost discussion too, the owner has to say, from a total cost perspective, I want to know the information about my building so it doesn't hurt people, makes them comfortable, and the standard of care should be, and if they didn't ask for that and something bad happens, it's on the owner or it's on the engineers or whoever was responsible for it. It does have to make its way into contracts, and that's part of the discussion next month, is really how do we get owners and government agencies to start asking the right questions about just the fundamentals, because they don't have the fundamentals in place to even know what's in the buildings, or even, we've talked about this before, even know how many buildings they own in their inventory. That's not an exaggeration. We've worked with government agencies.
You're right.
They don't
Not
know.
exaggeration at all.
Yeah.
So what kind of organization needs to put together data at that level? I'm talking in terms of the ontologies and taxonomies. Is this something that the AIA does? Is this something that ASHRAE does? Is this something that CSI does? Who is responsible for data at that level, and what work are they already doing along those lines, Kimon?
Right. I think some of the C4SB work actually is tackling that, because we're looking at the different protocols. Rogers Online, so Project Haystack, then we have ASHRAE 223P, then we have BIM standards, and the touch points between them are important. So if we look at the semantics and ontology, when we're saying what space number is the piece of equipment that's overheating, like we were showing earlier on the 4th floor, Is it a space? Is it a room? Is it a thing? Well, if we know just that common thread, then you can say, okay, then there's a system behind here that has the temperature of the room that says we're on the 4th floor and this is happening here. There's not going to be a single organization, I think, that has all of it. And that's our challenge, I think, as an industry. We have so many different organizations, but if we're not proactive about it, we'll still remain in the silos and no discussions will happen.
So
I
if you
think-
looked for an area of convergence where those areas touch one another, is the answer BIM? I mean, where do these different fields meet at the level that solve the problem like the one in front of us on the screen?
Yeah, my personal experience has been that if we go back to the fundamentals, we don't even need BIM. BIM would be great, but if there's no BIM, like when you go into a building, you have those fire escape plans. Those are just 2D plans, say stairwell here, the risers here, the exits here, whatever. Spaces are critical, I think. And this is kind of fundamental. It's almost like the map of the building. If you don't have a map of the streets on the city, you can't find your way around. You can't find an Uber. The same thing in the building. If you at least have, I'm on the 4th floor on this corner of the building in this space, that's this many square feet. And here are the things that are in this space. There's a sensor, there's a person, there's a fire, there's an overheating, there's a cost per square foot, whatever. It's space seems to be almost the most fundamental piece before getting into the full-blown BIM, which I'm very much into BIM, but I feel that I've written this article, the Hollywood BIM approach is people kind of get stuck on the detailed BIM, how fantastic it looks. And it does look fantastic. It does have a lot of use cases. But if the BIM is not here when this building is on fire, nothing about it matters, right? And that's kind of the status quo. Owners do not have the BIM in a format that is accessible to the fire chief. Because the fire chief could care less about BIM. He just wants to know what's going on the 4th floor. Do I go up there and save that person or that whatever is going on, the structure of the building on the 4th floor.
Just to add a bit to that, way back when we were first starting to get excited about using the internet to be the display for the building and started to create the idea of a map. One of the most valuable documents that I had in that very first evolution of that was a hand sketched picture of the water mains for the buildings, showing exactly where the shutoff was for each floor and showing where the access to that was. And that became the most important document. It wasn't a CAD document. It wasn't anything. It was basically a collection of napkins that was written, that finally got scanned and put on in a very crude file. But it was one of the screens that could be quickly brought. So anytime there was a water interruption on one of the floors, they could actually get to it. So I think that kind of proves, and now we're talking, back in the early days, it was some of the first HTML that the idea of using HTML as a building operating system. So anyway, I think we're too precious about getting the information all done. And I think maybe you've made that point, Kimon, that you start with the data that you have and the data that you need, and then build from it rather than sort of taking off on a plan of trying to get everything online.
Yeah. And if you have it somewhat structured, doesn't have to be perfect. Actually, that's something. First step is just to surface it if you can get to it. And then format that's machine readable, then other applications can go and get that data, just like you've described on that napkin sketch. If you can't get to the information, somehow it seems like Zoom is frozen for me.
Yeah, you were breaking up a bit.
Connection, I think.
So let me ask the question for those of us on the call. From a consulting engineering's perspective, the next building that we're asking, that an owner comes to them and says, I want you to do the design, the engineering for the mechanical and electrical systems in the building. What's going to change, or what should change in the specification versus what they provide today as a standard? Specific to this question of information. How does it look different in the future that would then address this fundamental problem? Glenn, do you want to weigh in on that? You're muted.
Could you just repeat the question, Steve? Sorry.
Yeah. So imagine that you're buying a building tomorrow, and you hire one of the top consulting engineers to design the mechanical and electrical systems. Okay, and you're familiar with, and you're asking them not only specify the right type of equipment, and make sure you have qualified vendors bidding on all this stuff who can provide it, but as part of the spec, I want the specification to outline what information is to be provided associated with that design, such that the conversation we're having right now is going to be addressed in such a way that that information is now readily accessible to the owner and to any of his service providers. How does that actual document, the specification, differ from what we see today?
Well, I guess my just general top-down reaction would be, most equipment specs today, even if they're put into a systemic context, are still all about, whatever the technical parameters you expect from the piece of equipment, not the data or the information value you expect. This is a place where my experience in industrial spaces, it's gotten a lot further along. I'd still say this is still primarily, whatever, more advanced, more sophisticated users. But I've seen many instances in the industrial space where people have let specs out and they go all the way down to, protocols but what kinds of data will be made available from a given machine. And they've standardized, essentially the specification to request that, the machine produces, X, Y, Z, and 1, 2, 3 types of data and makes it available to the system and so forth. I just hardly think we're there in the building space yet, but I could be wrong. But I think that's extremely valuable. Because it's tantamount to beginning to actually map, what kind of information. It makes people think about the kind of information they actually need to interact with and so forth to manage these systems. I scratch my head that this hasn't occurred sooner.
I think there's something very fundamental that can be added, which speaks to a lot of what Kimon was talking about. And that's basically a locational coordinate for everything.
Wow.
So when something's actually installed, just an X, Y, and a Z, lat, longe, and altitude. And the installer can enter that data from their cell phone when they're at the site.
Yeah. Okay.
Create a BACnet object to carry that data, and it's just a basic. That leads the way towards a lot of the locational stuff you were talking about, Kimon. And if somebody was to do it after the fact, it's actually not that hard to do, but it still would take time. But on new installs of equipment, it would be very straightforward. If there was just an installer field where they put in the location when it's installed, then it would be there ever after. It's a piece of foundational information.
Yeah, I really like that. It's a great idea.
It's a great idea.
It could be the location as far as lat, long, whatever, but it could also just be I'm in room 401. That's closer than.
Problem is that room 401 changes, right?
Well, That's the
Right.
big problem.
when they
That's very-
remodel the floor and blow it all out. And that happens to us all the time, is that, you know, in the time constant of buildings, while the planet is still here, lat, longe, and altitude will probably still be with us, right?
Yeah, well, both would be good. but-
We hope so. We hope so. Also, that could be done by a robot acting like a Google Drive-by, who basically walk through the building every week or something like that, and could do like an upgrade of assets and and any other. It could be measuring temperatures, humidities, cleanliness, and air quality. It could be done in that kind of a simple approach as well. Maybe.
Yeah. The owners that I've worked with that have had success with this do own the room numbers. So they say the room numbers are owned in our system. And if you want to do something with us, you have to use our room 401. And we don't want you renaming it to 402 or 403. And then adding the Latin long on certain things would adds another layer of certainty to it. So that's on existing buildings. But if we go back to BIM, in BIM, this goes back to the fundamentals again too. In BIM, you can say, we want the room numbers and information about the rooms, and then we want the assets with those IDs. Here comes an air handling unit with that ID, and there's a delivery mechanism, it's called COBE, that requires that as part of the contract. And if the owner checks it, then you can do automated checking and say, okay, I see air handling units and rooms and whatever, and we have examples of this, but essentially it's a table. You can have a table of rules. We want 1,000 rooms in this building. We want 10,000 assets. We want the assets to be called like this. And they could have other attributes, and you can be as prescriptive or leave that loose as well. But as long as it starts landing in more or less the right location, especially with the room, and if you use lat long, then at least you have a location, and you can always add to that. The complexity, which Jim, what you I think identified, is if they hire another consultant and that consultant doesn't call room 401, they call it 4001, you immediately have a new silo that you have to then map to. And this happens over and over again, which it's on the owners at that point to require the deliverable of data in a format that matches their current standard. Not 4001, that's a reject. 401 is acceptable.
I think there's some other fundamental things that can be added. Location is one. But installation date, right? Or replacement date. So if you're looking at a preventive maintenance program, once again, if every device or every piece of equipment carried a tag as to when it was put in, and from an asset management standpoint, if one's using a sophisticated asset management system, you could tag other physical assets like windows or other capital items in the building, just so that one could do a decent aging study of what's in there.
Yeah, while you're at it, Jim, you could also add the warranty date for the device.
Right.
Yep.
What are some of the other fundamentals like that would be, that have historically been outside the bounds of controls or mechanical systems, but are really basic?
Manufacturer's name, model number. How do you identify the device if it's a device?
Yeah,
Theoretically, BIM is supposed to be providing that if it's required, right, Kimon?
If it is, and if it's checked, usually it's not checked. It's required. It's in the contracts a lot of times. The owner doesn't check it because it's too complex, and then nothing gets transferred over. But some owners that do check it, the ones that say, well, we are going to check spaces and assets and these lists of attributes. They even have lists. Well, here are the types of attributes we want from the piece of equipment. A lot of it can come from BIM, but there's also other stuff that happens in the field. Once it gets installed, once you start maintaining it, once you start putting control systems on it. But if you have the IDs of that location in the room and that asset, then you can add infinite attributes to it.
I mean, I think that speaks to something that Steve just asked for, which is what can a consulting engineer add to their specification to make it more serious? And I think, if they added this basic locational data and manufacturer's data and install data, then there would at least be, a standardized holding place for it.
Yeah.
And we can come along
Right.
through C4SB and decide, what standards committees we want to propose those changes to. And, really help explain and bootstrap to the mechanical engineering consultants that, this isn't going to be a one-off. This is going to be an industry effort to add this other metadata that would be very useful in the long run.
Yeah. And those consultants could actually guide the owners. If the owner's not asking or checking it in the right way, instead of just delivering whatever the contract randomly asks for, you could say, well, okay, you're asking us for this, but we noticed you don't have any consistent ID or naming convention or semantics or whatever in the data that you're giving me, and you're going to end up with a mess. So, but that's not typically what the consultants do. They would just take the contract and deliver whatever, right?
But I think that, you're asking somebody that's risk averse.
Mhm.
Basically, the consultant is getting paid to plant stamp the risk.
Right.
And the more boxes that are checked, the more risk they have. So I wouldn't expect it to be an innovative group
Yeah.
when when it's all about limiting their liability.
Yeah. That's
So
why we
we
end up with
might have
24.
to figure out how to lead them by coming up with some industry consensus and foisting it off on them.
Yeah, we need a bigger carrot, and that's why you end up with that 24-story fire all over the place, or the collapse in Miami, or whatever. So somehow putting it out there and having what's the risk of not doing it, which goes back to total cost, I think. Oh, we're at the top of the hour. We kind of started a couple minutes late, but we probably should wrap it up. Any final thoughts?
Good.
This was great.
Well, I guess final thought that just came to me was the idea that I don't know if BIM's the right tool or an asset management database is needed, but the idea that when you specify what these core pieces of information are, that at the conclusion of the project, that each contractor essentially uploads their matching file to this central database, this warehouse, data warehouse, if you will. If it can be done without having, if it's kind of inherent in the way the system was designed, then it can be essentially polled and done automatically, right? If the software was designed appropriately. But if it's not, then they would be required to provide it in an approved data format that could then be captured by the owner's database, if you will.
One adjustment to that I would say is that not only at the end, but while it's happening, because we've seen that kind of failure. Let's wait till the very end of construction, hand over a box of stuff, and stuff is missing. Right. So what we tend to push owners towards is start doing spot checks as things happen, as installations happen, as deliveries happen, as new commissioning happens. Whatever, anytime anybody touches something in the project, it should be accessible and available to the project and delivered as data, and then so you don't get surprises at the end.
Right.
I think that's important. We're all navigating complexity, and our complexities are in our minds are not unified. So I think everybody should have to express when you come in to work on an air conditioner, you should have to tell them what it is you did, what you observed, I think would be very useful information. And if the people, so these interacting contractors and interacting service groups need to be held accountable and have an easy way of accessing that information, whether that's with QR codes or ever how that's done. But it needs that whole operational side has to be dealt with. I don't think it's dealt with very well in buildings today. And we're creating more complexity. We're not making it simple. Nobody is making the building simpler. We're making them more complex. So that's actually our motive, or our theme for AHR is navigating complexity.
Okay, we somehow survived without Anto today.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Okay,
Well, thank you very much, Kimon. Appreciate it.
thanks.
And,
Thanks,
Give it a
Kimon.
shot.
see you guys next time.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.